My name is Sheena Cameron, and I've been in the Dixon area since 1982. I came with a friend. We drove up into Taos, saw Double Rainbow, saw all sorts of art galleries. And I first lived in Chamizal, and then I met some Dixon people at a craft fair, and they said, "You should live in Dixon." I moved to Dixon the next year, and I've been here ever since. As soon as I built this place here in Canada, built this in 2001, I just couldn't resist getting into clay. Originally, I really thought that I'd get into figurative work, but kind of make it more symbolic, like somehow putting a lion's mane on a woman's head. Just various things that would indicate our symbolic connection with animals. And I think part of the reason I tend to do more women than male figures is that I think a lot of women who went through art school and went through the traditional art history classes like I did. I went to art college in the late 60s, and art history classes were kind of out of the 50s. There were maybe one or two women ever mentioned in the whole of anything. And I think that over the years, myself and other women have just decided that, the museums are so full of female figures done by men that it's time that there were more female figures done by women. So the horses that I've been doing, I hadn't intended to specialize in making horses. What I thought I would be doing is making a lot of, forms that were, like part human and part animal, and things that were, archetypal and symbolic. And I started making these horses, and because I had recently been a jeweler, and I still have all my jewelry equipment, and I still had a lot of beads and stones and things, pretty soon I just started putting the beads as the mane and tail on horses. But they were hollow, because you basically have to make things hollow or they're not going to fire right. And I kind of couldn't resist. I thought, gee, I could just cut this little hole in here and have a little door. And that sort of opened up horizons too. I do these other shape of horses that are much more of, almost a mountain shape. But I know that those tall horses, as well as wanting them to look kind of mountain-like, it also gave me kind of room on both sides, these flat spaces that was almost like a blank canvas where I could do all sorts of different symbolism that quite different from the other horses. And the messenger horses I made to look like they were running or having some kind of motion. But the other horses, I did want them to look, more architectural maybe. There's kind of no end to it. So I have a feeling I'll be making horses for the rest of my artistic life. So the first studio tour was in 1982, and I had just been in Dixon for a few months, and I did get invited to join the group that was planning the studio tour. Nausicaa Richardson and Carolyn Thomas were the two that started. It originally started with Nausicaa, who was a potter, and she had a lot of people that loved her work, so she had a good mailing list. And then she had a friend, Stephen Kilbourne in Pilar, who was also a very good potter with a very good mailing list. And one day they said, why don't we put our mailing list together and invite a bunch of people up to see our studios one weekend. I think it was La Cienega, I might be wrong, but there was this one other little town in New Mexico who had a studio tour, and that had gone really well, and they said, why don't we do that here? None of us really expected much to happen, and all of a sudden the day came and people started pouring into town. It was a lot of fun, and a lot of people have stories like Sandy Funk lived down one of the arroyos, and she wasn't expecting much to happen, but she decided that she ought to, sweep her porch at least So she goes out there in her nightgown and starts sweeping, and all of a sudden all these cars full of strangers start driving up. So by the second year, we were a little bit more prepared.